And a happy Sunday out there to all of you in the state of Florida. Down here in South Florida, in Miami, it's a gorgeous day. And the Marlins and the Nationals are about to play some baseball and finish off a 3-game series. Marlins, behind Jose Fernandez, captured Game 1 on Friday night. Ryan Zimmerman and the Nats answered back in a big way last night. So, add them up. This would be Game 3, the Fish and the Nationals. Rich Waltz, along with Tommy Hutton. It's been an interesting series. From the high of Friday night with Jose and his dalliance with a no-hitter, and, of course, last night in Ryan Zimmerman's big heroics.
Well, I'll tell you what, over the years, the Marlins have seen a lot of Ryan Zimmerman, so no surprise that he would have a big night in a game against the Fish. He hit 2 home runs, got a hanging breaking ball. He found the home run sculpture. But Ryan Zimmerman, 3 home runs against the Marlins this year. In his career, Zimmerman has more home runs against the Marlins than any other team. He's hit over 300. He's hit 21 home runs against Miami.
It's still odd seeing him hit in the 2 spot, though. I mean, the Marlins are used to seeing him in the 3 or the 4 spot.
Yeah, the Nationals have been playing pretty well, though, since he's hit number 2.
Nationals without Bryce Harper. Harper has returned home to D.C. to have that hip looked at. But they do have Steven Strasburg. Now, the last time the Marlins saw Strasburg, they didn't see a whole lot of him because rain stopped that start against he and Henderson Alvarez. His last start, though, he was back to pitching well. Didn't get the win. He struck out 10, though.
And you never know. That last start, he went 2 innings. He didn't give up anything, but he's had kind of an odd year. He's 5th in the league in ERA, but the record just 6-9. He spent a little time on the disabled list. He's not had back-to-back wins this year. That's part of the offense that he has struggled with, but all in all, Strasburg has been healthy. He's probably going to give them 30 starts this year.
Jacob Turner gets the ball for Miami, and for Turner, his year has kind of been an up and down kind of year. He couldn't get out of his own way in Atlanta. He pitched pretty well. He just didn't field real well.
You know, it's really kind of strange. His last win was July 10th. His last 9 starts, he's 0-4. Got 5 no decisions, but an ERA is under 4. So he's not gotten a lot of support. He's walked a few too many, and that's where he's gotten in trouble.
And he didn't get a whole lot of support, but he's got company. That's been a theme for the Marlins starters throughout the year. All right, it's the final game of this 3-game series coming up from Miami. A little Jose Fernandez update. When does he pitch next? What do his numbers look like? Rookie of the year? Just about everybody's got him on the top of the lists. over Miami, over Marlins Park. Nationals and Marlins. Let's head out to center field. Craig Minervini, Jeff Conine.
And one of these days we'll do that pregame show from the Blip, because we tried a few times.
Really?
Three times I actually drove over there, and weather conditions, and we didn't make it. And that was in the old days, not with our beautiful roof here. Hey, let's talk a little bit about Jose Fernandez. The Marlins have made some news here as they're going to kind of clarify what they're going to do with the start, which will be his final one of the season Wednesday. Take us through it here, Jeff.
Yeah, the 170 hard cap, as we've been hearing about the innings limit they were going to give Jose Fernandez. You see the announcement they made yesterday. He's just going to get out there. He's going to make a start and pitch like he would any other game. And however far he goes is how far he goes. I'm sure, they've always been cognizant of that pitch limit, around 100 pitches, whatever. And if that happens in the 7th inning, 8th inning, whatever it takes, he's going to be able to finish that game out.
That is awesome news, I think, and especially for Jose. He doesn't have to think about letting it fly for 3 innings, and that's it. And it's a smart decision, I think, by the ball club. And as we mentioned the other day, I talked to Davey Johnson, who knows a few things about these type issues, and he thought it was a great idea that the Marlins are shutting him down. The story he told me was, Dwight Gooden had a lot of innings in his day, and was already built up 200 plus when he went to his rookie year. Some guys haven't done that, like Jose Fernandez.
Yeah, absolutely. This guy pitched in a single-A ball last year, and now in his first full season, he's got 170. That's a lot of stress on an arm. You want to watch it as much as you can.
So he'll wind up hopefully with 172, 173 innings if he has a nice long start against Atlanta and a shot at a 12th win. And I think he's put himself in great position to win the Rookie of the Year. We'll talk more about that during the ball game. But hey, we got the rubber game of the series. The Marlins trying to make it a 5-4 home series against the Washington Nationals this year in the 3 separate matchups. Ryan Zimmerman, a lot to say about that Game 2 win. Ball game coming up in a moment.
Let's go places by AT&T Uverse TV. Check availability 1-800-PICK-AT&T. Rethink possible by Just for Men Mustache and Beard. By Checkers. Feast on. Goodyear Blimp will be cruising all around South Florida today while the Nationals and the Marlins play. The Nationals lineup brought to you by JM Lexus. Speedy Denard Span up top. Ryan Zimmerman slotted in the 2 spot. Jason Worth hits 3rd. Adam LaRoche in the cleanup spot. Ian Desmond out of Sarasota is at shortstop. Wilson Ramos, the catcher. Tyler Moore is in left. No Bryce Harper. He's back in D.C. having his hip examined. Anthony Rendon, the rookie, at second base. Steven Strasburg hits 9th. And Jacob Turner makes start number 18. Pinch a penny, as always, ready with the first pitch. And here we go from Marlins Park, a comebacker.
And Turner, it's appropriate that he gets a ball like that, Tommy, that he just could flip to Morrison. That was an issue in his start against the Braves.
Well, he had trouble. He made some errors in that game, but what a nice way to start, getting a hot hitter like Denard Span. There you see the numbers on Jacob Turner making his 18th start. Remember, he started the year in AAA, so all totaled 160 innings for Turner, looking for his first win since July 10th.
Special spots in the bat rack to put those things?
To get that win, he's going to have to get this guy out, because last night, on a tough night for Nathan Eovaldi, Ryan Zimmerman pumped 2 out of the ballpark. Zimmerman 19 home runs, 24 doubles. Gary Cederstrom calls strike 2. Cederstrom behind the plate. Angel Hernandez is at first. Kerwin Danley out at second. Lance Barksdale, the umpire, at third. Weekend series wrapping up. And Zimmerman stepping out with the organ music as he stepped in. Ball in the dirt. Rob Brantley knocks it down. Rob Brantley getting the start behind the plate as he works with Jacob Turner. The Marlins trying to give Brantley a few games here in September to iron out his defensive issues.
You know, a lot of the things, Rich, that he worked on, calling games, kind of slowing things down, keeping a pitcher focused on at-bats, watching hitters' feet. The mechanical part of it, we've seen him throw. He has a good arm. It's just the experience, the day in and day out of catching.
Turner's 2-2 pitch. How about another comebacker? and a throw over to first in time to get the out. It's as if the baseball gods are testing him right away. Cleveland Clinic brings you the defense.
You see a couple of little changes with Christian Yelich, Ruggiano in center. Chris Coughlin has played 3 different positions in 3 games in this series. He's in right. Polanco, Echeverria, Solano, and Lomo around the infield, and we talked a little bit about Brantley behind the plate. Got a little soreness in that ankle for Giancarlo, so he sits this one out.
So no Harper for the Nationals, and no Stanton for the Marlins. And here is Jason Worth. It really would be a sign from above if Turner were to get 3 comebackers here in the first inning. Worth last night had a couple of doubles, 3 for 8 in the series. He backs away, spins away from a breaking ball. The Nationals are by their fingertips right now, holding out hope in the wild card. They're 72-69. They desperately need to just go on an incredible run if they're going to have a shot at this. Davey Johnson's ball club looking at the 3 teams in the Central, and none of them seem to be slowing down. Not St. Louis, not Pittsburgh, not Cincinnati. And so 8 games back of that last wild card spot are the Nationals.
You look at the Nationals schedule too, Rich, and they've got the Mets coming up. They go to New York for a 4-game series. Of course, the Marlins go into Washington. And they have 3 games left with St. Louis. Really the only chance they have to play somebody in there that they can catch up in that wild card race.
Of those 3 teams in the Central, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and St. Louis, Cincinnati may have the easiest schedule coming up. Liner into left field. And a base hit for Worth.
Well, Jason Worth has just been on fire. Period.
And in this series now, he's got 4 hits. He's had a terrific year, and he's kind of flown under the radar because he didn't have enough bats, Tommy, to qualify for the batting race. But when we saw him in Washington, it was like, as Keith Olbermann would say, hello. He popped in and arrived, and suddenly he's in the top 5. That hit right there probably moves him into a tie with Andrew McCutchen for 4th.
Yeah, Chris Johnson still hanging in there at the top of that batting race.
Here is Adam LaRoche now. LaRoche 3 for 6 in this series.
I didn't know that was Keith Olbermann. I thought that was Tootie the Fruity that said hello.
Well, I think Tootie stole it from Olbermann.
Okay.
And the pitch is outside. So the Nationals see those three teams in the Central, and catching any of the three is going to be tough. The Reds have probably the best schedule going forward. They play Pittsburgh 6 times, and then they play a lot of teams with losing records.
By the way, LaRoche finds himself in the cleanup spot with Harper out of the lineup. Davey Johnson kind of adjusts things, and everybody moves up a little bit.
Still a pretty thick lineup with Zimmerman, Worth, LaRoche, and Desmond in the heart of it. And I guess that's part of the mystery of the Washington Nationals. Their rotation is still really good. Their bullpen, not bad. I know Drew Storen hasn't had the best of year, but Clippard and Soriano have been solid. But they find themselves just 3 over, and a lot of people picked them to win the East. Many more picked the Nationals than they did the Braves. And of course, the Braves have just run away with the division. Atlanta's in Philly on a 1:30 start with Paul Maholm taking on Cole Hamels today.
This, by the way, is an inning that Jacob Turner doesn't want to let get away from him. Good move by Rob Brantley to go out, just kind of calm him down, let him know there's a man at second. Signs are a little different. But after 2 quick outs, the base hit, now a walk.
And the walks have been an issue. Smoked, but fouled.
If you go back, Rich, to Jacob Turner's last 4 starts, he's pitched a total of 21 1/3 innings. In those starts, he's given up 24 hits and 16 walks. You add those together, that's a lot of base runners.
That's a whip of nearly 2. And that's a recipe for trouble. The amazing thing is, he hasn't had any of those games where he's given up a whopping number of runs, and he's kept his ERA in the low 3s. Desmond goes after that breaking ball out to center. That would be Ruggiano territory today, and he makes the catch. And Jacob Turner gets through the first. We're underway in Miami. The Marlins coming up to hit. There he is, Tommy. Balloon animals for everybody. It's like little Monsters Inc. going on right now. All right, here come the fish. Nice beat shot there. JM Lexus brings you the lineup. Chris Coughlin finds himself in right field. Donovan Solano behind him. Christian Yelich is in left. Justin Ruggiano plays center. Logan Morrison at first base. Placido Polanco at third. Adeiny Echeverria the start at short. Rob Brantley slotted 8th in front of Jacob Turner.
Well, we talked quite a bit about Steven Strasburg, 25 years old, course, he had Tommy John surgery, came back, much heralded last year. Innings limit for Strasburg. He won 15 games, but he threw just 159 in the third innings last year. This year, the problem has been support, but this is a ball club that he has more starts against, more wins against, the Marlins.
Chris Coghlan. And a fastball at 95 miles an hour. Coghlan has been all over the place in this series. Third base, left field, right field. And if he keeps swinging it like he's swinging it, he's going to keep finding himself popping up in the lineup, which is just fine with Coghlan.
Well, there's a couple of things that he's got an opportunity to establish these final weeks.
Up the middle. Desmond gets to it, and a little off-balance throw.
One of them is to show his versatility, and also if he continues to swing the bat the way he has.
The Nationals defensively. Cleveland Clinic, Florida brings it to you.
Tyler Moore and Denard Span, Jason Worth in that outfield, Zimmerman and Desmond, Rendon and LaRoche, and Wilson Ramos has caught all 3 games of this series.
It's not been a good year defensively for the Nationals. 97 errors. Only Milwaukee has made more errors. Miami, an improved defensive team this year. Marlins, middle of the pack. Right now, 7th in the National League in fielding percentage. Solano, a couple of hits this series. Donovan and his brother Jonathan, of course, a week and a half ago up in D.C. when the Marlins were through there. Their mother came in from Colombia. They had a terrific week together, the whole family.
There's that big curveball from Strasburg.
One, two from Strasburg. And Solano goes after it. Big hammer. And 2 outs.
Check on that scouting report for Steven Strasburg. The fastball still lively, 92 to 97. Hard power curve, saw a couple of them to Donovan Solano. And his changeup, similar, maybe not quite as hard, but similar to Jose Fernandez, is in the upper 80s.
Christian Yelich now. Yelich has banged out 3 hits in the series. His average closing back in at 300. Strasburg misses in with a fastball. The Marlins, as we noted, were all lined up, all warmed up, ready to face Strasburg on that Wednesday night in D.C. Henderson Alvarez was ready. And the game started, and both pitchers went a couple innings, and rain stopped it. And the rain delay was a little over an hour. Both managers figured that they would shut down Strasburg, shut down Alvarez, and it was a bullpen game from that point on. Washington ended up winning the ball game by a score of 4-3. Yelich spraying line drives over the Marlins dugout into the seats.
Yelich walked in his at bat against Strasburg in that game.
Yeah, Alvarez gave up a run in the second to Strasburg. 2 innings, no hits, no runs. Drew Storen ended up getting the win in relief. Swing and a miss. Strasburg dusts off both Solano and Yelich in a 1-2-3 first. Today's aerial coverage provided by Goodyear. Everything Goodyear has learned making tires that go the distance inspires what they roll into yours. Goodyear, more driven. Our legal reminder, this copyrighted telecast is presented by the authority of the Miami Marlins, may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the Miami Marlins. And anything that falls from the blimp, we're not responsible for either. Not that anything will. Wilson Ramos. A swing and a miss. Tyler Moore. Anthony Rendon in the second for the Nationals.
Talked about Ramos catching every game of this series. He missed 58 games, spending time on the disabled list with a hamstring injury.
Gets into that one. Drills it. Left center field. How far is that going? Wow. Way up by the flags. Wilson Ramos, his 11th home run this season. And that was a blast.
That's one that a left fielder just kind of turns, and watching Christian Yelich see where this pitch is. Boy, fastball. See how Brantley's reaching in? It missed the target. They wanted that pitch away. Ramos knew it. Turner knew it. And Christian Yelich in left field knew it.
That is a Clevelander home run. Here is Tyler Moore. And Moore takes a strike. So the Nationals, much like they did last night, getting on the board with the long ball. Last night it was Ryan Zimmerman pumping a couple out. Wilson Ramos here in the second with a solo shot. And Moore, the former Bulldog of Mississippi State, takes outside. He's in left field with Bryce Harper going back to D.C. to have a hip examined. Harper claiming his hip's fine and that he should be back soon, but the Nationals obviously want to take every precaution with their young star. And Harper's the type of guy that you almost have to protect him from himself, as tough as he is and as much as a gamer as he is.
Well, and another reason I'm sure Harper wanted to play, he's 3 for 6 with a couple of home runs against Jacob Turner. But Tyler Moore a few years ago was the Nationals Organization Player of the Year.
To right, hey, Chris Coghlan in right field.
Yeah, first game of this series, Chris was in left. Last night he was at third, and tonight in right.
You know, you're right about the versatility part, and Mike Redmond said that a couple weeks ago about Coghlan when the Marlins announced that he was coming back and going to play third. And the immediate questions were, well, can he be your long-term solution at third base? And Redmond said, you know what, I think what he can prove here is that if he can play third base, then he becomes a really valuable piece because he can play all 3 outfield spots and he can play third base. And in the National League, there's value to that.
Yeah, and I guess, Rich, what I would read into that is that he is not going to be the long-term solution at third base. That he's going to be a guy with a left-handed bat that can give you some base hits, that can start all over the place and get himself 400, 450 at-bats.
Anthony Rendon is up there right now. The count's 3-0. Well, let's face it. I mean, it's and we've had this discussion many times. The Marlins are thick with outfield depth, and that's all well and good. With Marcell Ozuna, with Jake Marisnick, with Christian Yelich, with Giancarlo Stanton, and the question's always been, well, who's going to be the odd man out? You got too many outfielders. Coghlan doesn't fit in there. But you never know. You don't know if Marisnick or Ozuna are going to be able to play at the big league level, and you think they might, but you never know. You don't know if Giancarlo Stanton can stay healthy. I mean, the Dodgers have had this discussion for the last 2 months. What's going to happen when Matt Kemp gets back? Well,
now it doesn't look like he's coming back.
What a mess that's going to be. And guess what? He's injured his hamstring. while rehabbing his ankle, and now it doesn't look like the Dodgers will have him back in September. And so what everyone predicted as a problem was something that Don Mattingly never had to deal with. So the moral of the story is you can never have enough of anything. Strasburg takes outside, and right now Turner having trouble finding the plate.
Well, after walking Rendon, all of a sudden Strasburg trying to give an out away by sacrificing, and Turner can't find the strike zone to him.
A strike, and it's 2-1.
Same thing with the pitching. Can never have enough. And everybody said, well, you have all these pitchers in the starting rotation. You have pitchers coming up that will be starters. Well, you never know. You never know how all the pitchers are going to materialize injury-wise, if they're going to advance in their stuff, in their control.
You look at every major league roster right now and go a little further down and look at the disabled list for every major league team, and it's littered with players that you thought would be everyday players that year. Turner pounces on it, throws to first in time. So the sacrifice complete. It sets it up for Denard Span. Nationals are on the board. A Wilson Ramos home run. Span, the Nationals center fielder, comes up. Span takes a strike. Another busy day in baseball. Moving and shaking going on, especially in the American League wild card race, which is tightening up, and some teams creeping closer that I think people had kind of written off, namely the Cleveland Indians.
I couldn't believe it. Just perusing the wild card races and saying, wow, Cleveland is still there.
Cleveland is a game back. They and the Baltimore Orioles, a game back of the slumping Tampa Bay Rays. Texas is the first wild card team.
That West Coast is taking a bite out of Tampa Bay.
Yes, Seattle's not been a good place for them right now. And Oakland has reclaimed the top spot in the West the last few days. They have a 1.5 lead over the Rangers, who suddenly have lost 3 in a row. Cleveland's 5.5 back in the Central. They're closer in the wild card, but still they've even crept within 5.5 games of the Tigers, and most people have already in pen written the Tigers into the postseason. Solano gets over for the ground ball and throws out Span, but the Nationals get the first run of the ball game. Roll those drums. Here we go. 1-0 Nationals.
the park. Marlins Executive Vice President of Operations and Events, Claude DeLorme, will take us on a tour of the artwork in Marlins Park, and we want you to be featured. Send us your best Marlins-themed photos, drawings, graphic art, or maybe you've got a mini Marlin fan that's a little bit of an artist. Send us your kids' drawings as well, and they could be featured on our art show September 10th.
I don't think Ada, you or I could draw will end up on the show.
I don't know if they would accept stick figures.
No.
They'd probably turn those down.
Ruggiano's up. Strasburg misses in with a fastball. Ruggiano, Morrison, Polanco. Giancarlo Stanton getting the day off with a sore ankle. Second start of the series for Ruggiano, and he sends one into center field, a base hit. So a leadoff runner aboard against Strasburg, and here comes Morrison.
Ruggiano, a little history against Steven Strasburg. He's 3 for 9 against Strasburg, and it's too bad that Giancarlo's out of there. Stanton 7 for 18 with a couple of home runs against the Nationals right-hander.
Speaking of home runs, Logan Morrison hit one of the longest.
Well, the longest in Marlins Park history.
And Morrison takes the strike. Hit Tracker Online is our go-to place for home run distances. And Morrison's home run, one of the 3 longest homers of the week. 467, the true distance from Hit Tracker Online. For those that missed it, here it was. And there it went.
Yeah, there it went. Third or fourth row back into that second deck.
Morrison up the middle. That's a base hit. And so Lomo continues to swing the bat well. And that's really good to see. Couple hits here in the second inning. Now comes Placido Polanco. Mark Trumbo had the longest homer of the week, by the way. 471, and that was at Angel Stadium.
Big right-handed hitter with tremendous power from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Soon to be just the Los Angeles Angels. They're dropping Anaheim.
I hope the folks of Anaheim haven't taken offense with that.
Well, they signed a long-term lease extension at the same time, so a little give and a little take. Placido Polanco now. First and second, and nobody out against Steven Strasburg.
Now we've talked about and we've seen good swings this inning. The Marlins in the month of August hit 221. And so far here in the month of September, as a team, over 300, 303. But they'll be tested today.
Polanco has gone to 3-0. Polanco, not an easy guy to walk. Well documented. One of those early contact guys. Tough to walk, tough to strike out. Echeverria's on deck. That's a strike, and a high strike at that, from Gary Cederstrom. Even Polanco, who doesn't walk much, thought he had walked. And
wow.
Look at that.
That's not even close.
Randi Institute bringing you Foxtrot.
He saw how Polanco turned around when he heard the call.
Only 20 walks this year for Polanco. That's in. And he knows he's walked now. He tosses the bat, trots down to first.
Well, we've seen Adeiny Hechavarria get some huge base hits with bases loaded. A couple of grand slams this year, one in Philadelphia, one in Chicago. So here he is with the bases full.
Infield back. Nationals will give up a run. is a balk. A balk is called. Strasburg balks, and the Marlins have a run and have tied this game. And no argument from Strasburg. No argument from the Nationals bench. And how about that? With nobody out, Strasburg switched to go to the windup and balks.
Well, he's ready to work. Now he puts the hand in and can't do that. Once you get the hand set in, you got to stay there.
Echeverria, a little tapper. Runner comes home and will score. And Echeverria is out. Good heads up and instincts by Morrison from third. And just like that, the Marlins have a 2-1 lead.
On a balk and a little roller that went about 30 feet. Well, by making contact, those little things happen, though. And you're right about Lomo. With nobody out at the time, he picks this up right away. He's not immediately going on contact, but once he sees where the ball is, he picks it up, and he's able to score.
So with one out, there's a big run out there at third base.
Well, the other thing about that, the runner was able to go to third, Polanco, as well.
In a Strasburg start, if you can get early runs, you better get them. And the Marlins have an opportunity with Brantley up right now. The infield is drawn in for Washington. Polanco, good hustle all the way to third.
There's that changeup, usually 88, 89. Strasburg, an interesting case when he was in college at San Diego State as a freshman. Very overweight.
Yep.
Shed a lot of weight. He was about 250 pounds.
Tony Gwynn, the head coach at San Diego State at the time. Cholula hot sauce spotlight player. There you go. I think we've already covered everything except the first overall pick. Brantley takes in.
Well, he had to steer away from some of those nice Southern California burritos, maybe, and change his diet a little bit.
And Brantley, a San Diego guy himself, walks. Brantley a couple years younger than Strasburg.
This is amazing after an easy 1-2-3 inning. And Strasburg in the first struck out 2. He struck out Solano. He struck out Yelich. And all of a sudden here in the second, back-to-back singles, a couple of walks in the inning. Brings his pitching coach to the mound, Steve McCatty.
It's a really interesting situation at the plate right now. There are teams around baseball, one across the state, that's very good at this play, and that is a first and third bunt situation. And Jacob Turner is up there right now. Sometimes you'll see managers have the pitcher bunt just to get a guy from second to third and to stay away from a double play. You got a smart runner at third, and Polanco has good baseball instincts. And of course, Brantley is at first base. Obviously, Turner is no threat with the bat in terms of swinging.
And you need to have a hitter, in this case Jacob Turner, to be able to handle a bat and drop down a good bunt, which isn't easy to do off a guy like Strasburg. There's the beauty.
He does. It'll move the runner, but a nice play by LaRoche to look Polanco back at third base. And so the Marlins will take the bag at second. That play, if you can get the ball down the third base line and bring Zimmerman in, you might have a better shot at it.
And the reason being because then if you're Polanco, you just follow Zimmerman, the third baseman. Just stay a couple steps behind him, and you see what he does with the ball. Either way, it was a good bunt. Runners advanced. Now it's up to Chris Coghlan with 2 out.
And that's the benefit of having a guy like Coghlan who's swinging a hot stick. It's another balk. Strasburg is balked again.
Wow.
He's balked 2 runs in here in the second, and no argument from him and no argument from the Nationals bench. This is stunning.
I don't think I've ever seen 2 balks called in an inning on the same pitcher when no one has argued because they've clearly been balks. And that's another reason he's not been able to find the plate very well this inning.
Well, there's a runner at third, 2 outs, and a breaking ball misses in.
See if he does the same thing.
Yes. Yep, he moved that right hand.
He starts to move that right hand, then stops. So his concentration right now is totally lost.
You know, the thing that worked against him, Tommy, is the fact that once he had runners at third in a bases loaded situation, or in that case second and third, he went from the stretch to the windup.
A lot of guys will stay at the stretch position.
Exactly. Now, if he did that from the windup with a runner with no runners on, then it's no issue.
An amazing thing, he only has 3 balks all year, and 2 we've seen this inning.
The other amazing thing is that Bob Davidson's not working this game. Here's the 1-1. A swing and a miss.
You know, you have to reference Bob Davison, veteran umpire, known around the league as Balkin' Bob, because he seems to call a lot of balks.
Well, today it's Gary Cederstrom who's called a couple balks. And Strasburg obviously seems rattled. This is just an odd inning. The Marlins have 2 singles to open it, then a walk, then a balk, then a little ground ball that scored a run. And here is Coghlan, who has worked the count full to 3-2. Coghlan gets jammed and pops it up, and Zimmerman is there and he makes the catch. But the Marlins, with help from Strasburg, pick up 3 runs.
Healthcare of Florida.
Welcome back, everybody, to Marlins baseball here as we move along to the top of the 3rd inning. The Marlins scoring 3 runs with their balk offense, getting 2 runs on the Strasburg balks. But this has been the sign of an improving offense, getting runners on, plating runners in September that they can only hope to continue after what has been a miserable offensive season this side of June. Look, even the last couple of months for the Marlins, go to July and August, for example, and you look at this month from a standpoint of offense, the Marlins hitting over 300 this month, coming into the game here with 3 runs already through 2 innings. In the last 2 months, they hit just 222. They averaged 3 runs a game. They hit only 30 homers in 54 games. Here they're averaging better than a home run a game this month. Again, only 6 games into the 7th. But the hitting coach, John Pearson, has felt that of late their approach has been better. You like to use the word battle at the plate and really getting good counts. Obviously, the addition of Coghlan has helped, and some more of the power we've seen from Stanton and Lomo. And another thing he threw out, guys, was he said, boy, I didn't realize how great the defense is until you watch it every day in the major leagues. He says, there's balls every day I see that are going through in the minor leagues, that diving plays are almost routine here. Great plays, routine to get outs, where in the minors you see a lot of hits from those type.
That ball's crushed, and I don't think it's coming back. Bangs off the Clevelander side. Ryan Zimmerman. Now, Craig, that's a major league home run right there. Zimmerman, who's just smoking hot. 2 homers last night. Bangs one out of here. The Nationals climb within a run. It's 3-2.
Yeah, we talked about Ryan Zimmerman. His 4th home run against the Marlins this year. He's had 3 in the last 2 games. 22nd against the Marlins in his career, most against any team. And the interesting note on Zimmerman this year, 16 of his 20 home runs have been hit on the road.
Jason Worth now, and Adam LaRoche, Ian Desmond also scheduled to appear.
Zimmerman got one of those breaking balls from Jacob Turner. Didn't have that sharpness to it.
You know, Turner had not given up a lot of home runs into this start. Just 7 in 17 starts. That ball's crushed too. And it's hit so hard, it's going all the way to the wall. Yelich picks it up. It's not often you see a ball hit to the left of a third baseman that gets to the wall. That's Stanton-like stuff.
Yeah, Turner's going to have to be careful. He's had a couple of balls just hit hard. And off-speed pitches. The home run, this line drive. Yelich just moves over and knows it's going to be a double all the way.
Here's LaRoche now, who walked back in the first. LaRoche cranks one. Ruggiano got a good jump in the gap, makes the catch, tagging his Worth, and he's going to get to third base.
Well, something we've seen over the years, Rich. Jason Worth, big guy, has power, does a lot of things. Very good base runner.
Good instincts, surprising speed for his size. Really benefited from the years that he spent around Davey Lopes in Philly.
Picks up that fly ball, starts to go halfway, then says, oh no, that's going to be caught, and goes back and tags up.
One out. Desmond slices one in the gap. That's trouble. Gets to the wall. Desmond racing for second. And he'll hold there with an RBI double. And just like that, the Nationals have tied the game. I mean, to put this in, and it's opening day of NFL, to put this in football parlance, it's like the Marlins got a couple of scores on special teams with the 2 balks, and now the Nationals come out and hit 2 long pass plays for touchdowns.
You know, this ball is hit so hard. A lot of balls into that gap, and runners with pretty good speed, and Desmond has better than average speed, end up in third, but he hit it so hard that the Marlins outfield was able to track it down and hold him to 2, but there have been 3 balls hit extremely hard in this inning. That's a 35th double for Ian Desmond, and that's a single season career high. He's having another solid season. 20 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 35 doubles now.
He really is. And I mean, and last year, just an enormous year, a .511 slugging percentage. Not many shortstops around that give you that. And here's Ramos. He pumped one out back in the second, drilling one off the facing of the wall behind the flags near Jeff Conine's stairway to heaven. One-0 pitch in the dirt. Brantley blocks it. So the Nationals have 5 hits, and all of them have been rather loud. 2 doubles, Worth's and Desmond in this inning. 2 homers, Zimmerman's and Ramos's, and then Worth had a single back in the first on a line drive. There hasn't been a cheap hit yet for Washington. That one is hit hard into center field. Ruggiano picks it up, and the Nationals have runners at the corners. There was a saying long ago in baseball, in the 40s and the 50s, on a day like this, where around the dugout guys would say, "Get the married men off the infield."
Mm-hmm. A lot of truth to that. The other thing that there's truth to is that Jacob Turner's not fooling anybody, and Nate Eovaldi did not last night and only went 3 innings, and so it's going to have to be one of those situations. If this continues, and the bullpen's going to have to give Red a lot of innings. Nationals have had 8 base runners already today.
Even the foul balls are hit hard.
And the breaking balls are rolling. They're not sharp. The fastballs have missed location. And they've been fat balls.
No, I was just about to say, you would have been correct.
It's a Freudian slip, but I think I was right.
Had you stayed with your instincts, you would have been accurate.
See, you got to let the instincts take over once in a while.
At the corners, Desmond an RBI double, Ramos a line drive single. It's Tyler Moore up there right now for the Nationals. And Jacob Turner trying to hang in there, and he gets a strikeout of Moore on a sharper breaking ball. Ryan Webb is up in the bullpen. The dilemma for the Marlins, even with the expanded rosters and a deep bullpen, is the 3 innings by Eovaldi last night forced everybody to pitch in. Anthony Rendon walked back in the second. To right, Coghlan got turned around at the track. He makes the catch. Nice play by Chris. 3-3 in Miami. Just $22. Outback Steakhouse, South Florida Heroes. Monday, all military, veterans, police, firefighters, and first responders can receive complimentary tickets to the game. Marlins.com, the place to go. The Goodyear Blimp is with us, high above what has been a rather entertaining ball game so far here in Miami.
And I think even more so, Rich, if you like balks.
The Marlins. Now, can you say that they drew 2 balks? I guess you just say Strasburg committed 2 balks.
It's even hard to say they caused 2 balks because it's really been on Strasburg.
Yeah, the Marlins weren't doing
It wasn't like runners were bluffing up the line or trying to shake him up a little bit.
No, he balked home 2 runs in the second inning.
So right now, the words of advice to Steven Strasburg would be to keep runners off base. He can stay away from the balk.
Or stay out of the windup with guys on third. Both times to commit the balk, Strasburg simply started his right hand and arm towards the glove and stopped. And it was an easy call for Gary Cederstrom behind the plate. Solano, Yelich, and Ruggiano.
There's another way to read that also, and not to put blame on catcher. But sometimes if you're not in sync with your catcher and he's starting to flash a sign, you start to go, now you see another sign, and then you kind of stop. And I don't know if that was the case, but either way, the balk is on Strasburg. Or in this case, the 2 balks.
Letter high fastball. Solano struck out back in the first. He chased a breaking ball. Strasburg worked a 1-2-3 first. Looked sharp, striking out both Solano and Yelich on the way. And down goes Solano. Same pitch that got him back in the first. Poll question. AT&T U-verse brings it to you. Who's going to win the Central? Boy, this is...
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns, Rich. I'm still saying Cincinnati.
I have a hard time picking against the Cardinals simply because of their track record of what they've done.
Yeah, you're right. They don't have Alan Craig now for a little bit.
That's a good point.
And I like what you said about Cincinnati having a favorable schedule.
Yeah, because they've got Pittsburgh 3 at home and 3 on the road. And then a lot of teams that have fallen way out of it, including 3 games against the Houston Astros in interleague play.
And also now they just endured a long stretch, I think about a 3 for 30 from Joey Votto. So you expect all of a sudden now he'll start to get on track a little bit.
And he is. He was 2 for 2 with 2 walks
so
Friday.
I'm sticking. And you like Pittsburgh or St. Louis? You like St. Louis?
I like St. Louis, but you know the Reds were impressive this weekend. I saw him Friday. Yeah. I saw him yesterday. Here's Ruggiano. He had a base hit. That back in the second. That opened the balk fest. Ball and a strike. In fact, Pittsburgh and St. Louis play each other again today. And that game is in St. Louis. For the Cardinals and Cardinal Nation, a huge exhale and a sigh of relief that Adam Wainwright pitched well. Because his
he had 2 bad starts.
Yeah, 2 previous starts. He'd been knocked around.
Adam Wainwright, in their 5-0 win yesterday, went 7 shutout innings, gave up just a couple of hits.
Ruggiano battling. Counts 2-2. Strasburg seems to have composed himself here in the third. Wow, big wicked breaking ball for a strike. I guess he's composed himself. Look at that. 3-3, Fish and Nationals. It's a 3-3 game. How the Marlins arrived at 3 and how the Nationals arrived at 3 are two completely different things. The Nationals have not treated Jacob Turner with kid gloves. They've hammered some balls, including 2 long home runs. Ryan Zimmerman and Wilson Ramos. A couple of scorching doubles from Jason Worth and Ian Desmond. While the Marlins have their 3 runs, 2 have come home on balks. And the Marlins have just 2 hits, both of them singles. Strasburg up. And Strasburg takes outside. The count's 2-0.
You see the velocity of Jacob Turner, 92, not bad. 92, 93 is where we've seen him most of the year. But all of a sudden, 3-0 to Strasburg.
And he misses outside. A 4-pitch walk to the Nationals pitcher. And Chuck Hernandez for the second time is on the horn. Ryan Webb was up. Sam Dyson yesterday picked up the Marlins in that short start by Eovaldi. Span takes a strike. Dyson pitched 3 innings, gave up a run on 2 hits. It's Webb again.
And impressed his manager with a good sinker.
Yes, he did. Mike Redmond was talking about that particular pitch and Dyson before the ball game.
Part of the run, this nice run the Nationals have been on, is that man right there, Denard Span, with an 18-game hitting streak, hitting over 400. So setting the table for the other guys that have gotten hot.
Span finds the line. It's a fair ball. Yelich trying to cut it off. And fortunate for the Marlins that it's Strasburg who was at first because he can't find his way to third. Span easily would have had a double. As it is, it's just a single.
The amazing thing is that Span was alert enough when he rounded first, because this is a double all the way for him. But Strasburg really having trouble just getting to second. He doesn't pick up the ball right away, so he stays at second.
And he did not get a clean break from first. With the ball hit on the line, he froze. So another line drive well hit, but this one goes for a single. And here's Zimmerman, who's homered 3 times within the last 20 hours.
And a 19-game hitting streak now for Denard Span with that base hit. As Zimmerman starting for the 23rd time this year in the number 2 spot, the batting order.
Well, and that has helped spur the Nationals, and that may have an indirect influence on Span's hitting streak. Quite possibly he was getting a little bit better stuff to hit with Zimmerman hitting second. Down goes Zimmerman.
Well, Turner was able to get ahead, then he stayed away from Zimmerman with a fastball, moved a little bit, and good location.
That's a big out to get after the first 2 reached. Now Worth, who's hit 2 balls hard, a single and a double. You've got LaRoche on deck.
Gary Cederstrom, home plate umpire, getting a little earful, not only from Worth, but from the Nationals dugout, too, on that last pitch.
Worth pops it up, might be playable. Morrison coming over, and it's into the dugout and out of play. Well, the dugout reacts to the hitter and to the catcher, and you see that first pitch was a strike. It was at the knees. The dugout sometimes sees the ball where it's caught.
They see it low. Usually you hear from the dugout on a call like that, guys will be yelling, "Hey, he's 6'6".
But again, it's front of the plate, and a pitch that crosses the front of the plate at the knees could end up a lot lower when the catcher catches it. But that's a strike. That box, the Fox tracks, that is how umpires are graded on, and that's the strike zone that umpires strive to call. Doesn't matter where a catcher catches it, it matters where it crosses the front of the plate. There may be a time 15, 20 years from now where that sequence happens and an umpire whips out a handheld device with the Fox tracks and walks over the dugout and says, "See?"
And again, there could be a sequence where the manager walks up to the umpire and says, "See?"
See? One's got an iPhone, the other's got an Android.
Could the game ever come to that?
You never know. Counts 2-2. Strasburg at second. Span at first. On the ground, Polanco. Solano, tough turn, and he doesn't make it. Worth runs well, and Span was on top of Solano. The Marlins narrowly miss a double play.
Tough little pick by Polanco, but a nice dance move by Solano. Boy, that's bang bang, but looked like his foot was right on the bag. Just beat it.
Looked like Angel Hernandez was on it and made a good call. So what that does is it extends the inning, and now Turner has to get LaRoche, who lined to center and has walked.
Again, this has the feel of Jacob Turner's start in Atlanta. No decision. A lot of base runners. Gave up 4 hits, 4 walks. But just 3 runs and 2 earned runs. You know, a lot of that undoing was his. He made 3 errors in that game. But he just managed to work around it. And he's kind of doing that today, especially in this inning, if he gets out of this inning.
I think if you ask Chuck Hernandez, he would prefer that Turner not work into it before he had to work around it.
He would prefer not having to call the bullpen in the last 2 innings.
That's right. He's had Webb up twice.
There are times, a lot of it depends how many pitches a pitcher throws to get loose, but there are times if that happens 2 or 3 times, then all of a sudden you have to shut that guy down in the bullpen. Good job, Brantley, keeping it in front of him. Just do that, and the runners have to stay put.
Pitching coaches call that heating up. And if you heat a guy up 2 or 3 times in a game, on the many pitching coaches on their log of numbers of days worked, that will go in as a number of a day worked.
Well, and that's something that Reed Cornelius, Marlins bullpen coach, he keeps track of that down there in the pen.
At the corners, 1-2. LaRoche fouls it back. There is Webb. LaRoche not having the type of year that he had last year. Last year slugged .510, 35 doubles, 33 homers.
Yeah, the power numbers and production down this year from LaRoche,
who won a Silver Slugger and a Gold Glove.
And you and I last year, and talking to Davey Johnson and those who cover the Nationals last year, they felt LaRoche was their MVP with the solid year he had.
That pitch is way outside. And they count full now, 3-2.
He tried to change up there and missed badly with it.
I guess one of the questions about Turner, and it's a legitimate question, is he tired? Is he fatigued? Has he hit a wall?
Well, he's closing in on 165 innings this year.
Swing and a miss. And down goes LaRoche. He worked his way in, and he worked his way out. Year has learned making tires that go the distance inspires what they roll into yours. Goodyear, more driven. Marlins baseball as well, brought to you by Honda and by Coventry Healthcare of Florida, lighting the way to better health. Shot of Marlins Park on a Sunday afternoon in Miami. Been an interesting ball game here. Two boxed by that man, Steven Strasburg, allowing a couple runs to score and a 3-run second. And the Nationals offensively have swung the bats well. Jacob Turner has bobbed and weaved his way through and allowed just the 3 runs.
Now remember, Strasburg started that inning. He walked, and he was on the bases the entire inning. Let's see if that has any effect on him.
Now Morrison, you heard Jeff Conine in Marlins Live talk about Morrison and how he's made a slight adjustment in his swing, and all of a sudden the power has come pouring out of him. He had a line drive single in the second. Polanco and Echeverria will follow. Marlins and Braves tomorrow night. The Braves are in Philly and trailing 2-1 in the bottom of the third.
Trailing to Cole Hamels.
Tigers and Royals. You know, the Royals, and we were talking about Cleveland and how they've crept back in. Cleveland's closer than Kansas City, but Kansas City's 3.5 games back in the wild card. Though they have 3 teams in front of them. the Yankees, the Indians, and Baltimore. So with 3 weeks left, you never know. Oakland and the Rangers dueling in the West of the American League. Oakland's at home against Houston. And Texas is in Anaheim. The Angels all of a sudden have caught fire, but it looks
too little, too late. I think.
Tapper by Morrison. Strasburg fires to first in time. And an out to open up the fourth.
Yeah, the Athletics just keep finding a way. Game and a half lead over Texas.
Placido Polanco.
And what I want to know, Rich, is how can they be playing in the Bronx today and it's only a 1-0 Boston lead right now in the fourth inning?
I don't know, Tommy, but I do know that Derek Jeter's out of the lineup still.
Yeah, the ankle not performing well.
Nice play by a fan. He was going glasses up, Tommy, just in case the roof was open. He's got the glasses on top of
always
the cap.
Prepared. We like fans that are always prepared.
Oh, 2. Little roller. Desmond approaches, gets the out. 2 outs. Here comes Echeverria.
Rich, the first 3 games of that Yankee-Boston series in New York, the Red Sox have won 9-8, 12-8, 13-9. First visiting club to score 9 or more runs in 3 games against the Yankees.
Tommy, sad news coming out of, I don't know, Greece or wherever the International Olympic Committee is located. Once again, baseball will not be part of the Olympics when the games go to Japan in 2020. That one fouled off. Everyone thought, since baseball is so popular in Japan and Tokyo is going to host the games, but the International Olympic Committee has decided to reinstate wrestling, which makes guys like Dan Gable happy, but no baseball, no softball, and squash apparently is on the outs.
How about badminton?
I think badminton's still in there, which is a big boon to the shuttlecock industry.
I think you were working all year to get that in.
That's right. I had a friend bet me $50 I could not work shuttlecock into the show. That one fouled back out of play.
I thought it was called a birdie. Maybe as kids. I think they prefer kids call it a birdie.
All I know is I got my $50. Here's a 1-2. Slow breaking ball and a beauty from Strasburg, who has tightened up since the 2 balks in the second. 3-3 game. Ryan Zimmerman last night, couple home runs, and he's homered again today. Zimmerman, one of the all-time fish killers, living up to that in a 3-3 game in Miami. There's our look for the Goodyear blimp. AJ Speaks is our producer today. AJ, can we make the blimp go anywhere we want? Well, Bermuda would be my choice, but I don't know that they have enough. It is a little far. It's out of range. I don't know. Send them over to South Beach. Let's see what Marlins Park looks like from South Beach. Ian Desmond. They cannot go to Desmond's hometown of Sarasota, but if they did, they'd see a lot of proud people there. He has turned into a terrific major leaguer, and he's always hit the Marlins well, especially this year.
He had that incredible series in D.C. He was 8 for 12. Marlins kind of cooled him off a little the first 2 games here, but not today. 2 for 3 today. Yeah, I'd like to see the blimp head east over to South Beach and then kind of look back at Marlins Park. They could kind of go over the American Airlines Arena just to make AJ Speaks feel good and comfortable.
AJ, a producer for Miami Heat Television on Fox Sports Florida Sun Sports. Runner goes. It's taken for a strike, and the throw's late, and Desmond swipes the bag. 19 stolen bases for Ian Desmond. He's well on his way to being a 20-20-30 guy in terms of stolen bases at 19. He's got 20 homers. He's got 35 doubles.
Would be the second time, if he gets that 20 to steal, which he probably will, be the second time in his career. Got a long way to go to match the best total in Nationals history. That was the 46 home runs and 41 stolen bases of Alfonso Soriano.
That year turned into more money than most years in Major League history, because that prompted the Cubs to lay out that long-term money to Soriano, who is absolutely killing it as a Yankee right now. On somewhat of the Cubs' dime, the Cubs are still on the hook for part of that salary. But they talk about a change of scenery, not only venues and uniforms, but situations. You take Soriano from the Cubs, where they've been out of the race the last 3 years, and then plop him into New York for a team scratch and claw. Desmond is running again. A little ground ball is going to trickle into left field. Polanco had moved over to third with Desmond running, and Ramos takes the hit. It's his third hit of the day.
Now that's not a hit and run. The count was 1-2 at the time. But Ramos either alertly, because the pitch was way in, or he was just going to swing anyway. But it's a great choice, because with Polanco moving over, all of a sudden that hole opens up, and Desmond scored easily. Had to dance around Placido Polanco.
Mike Redmond is coming out. He's seen enough from Jacob Turner, and he's going to make the change. Marlins will double switch here on a Metro PCS call to the bullpen. certainly thank all the good friends we have at Goodyear. And a look at American Airlines Arena. Look at those World Championship trophies looking nice on the side of the building.
Not too far away, the cruise ships await, Rich.
That's pretty slick.
Well, double switch. We talked about that. Ed Lucas comes in to play third base. And one of the reasons Mike Redmond's using the double switch with Ryan Webb, in his last 5 appearances, Webb has gone 2 innings twice and 3 1/3 innings, which is his career high. He's done that. So all of a sudden he's becoming that guy who can give the ball club more than just 1 inning.
So Lucas is in the 9 spot. He's due up second in the bottom of this inning. And the pitcher Webb resides in Polanco's spot, 6th in the order. Moore goes after a fastball and fouls it back. This game's had a little bit of everything. From balks, Strasburg committing 2 with a runner at third each time. To long balls, the Nationals have launched a couple of no-doubters, Ryan Zimmerman and Wilson Ramos. We just saw Desmond swipe second and cause a ball to get into left field while running to third. Webb's out in front 0-2 on Tyler Moore. Anthony Rendon. And then pitcher spot, Steven Strasburg. Run across here in the 5th.
We talked to Rich at the very beginning of the game. Going back last 4 starts for Jacob Turner, lots of base runners between the hits and the walks. Today, Turner faced 24 batters, 12 reached base, 9 hits, 3 walks.
Saw Chuck Hernandez there talking to Turner, trying to keep his spirits up. Not just with Jose Fernandez and not just with the Marlins, our teams around baseball that are out of contention, keeping a close eye on young pitchers and their inning totals in relation to where they were last year or where they've been on their way up. That strike 3 called. Webb gets Tyler Moore. And the Marlins, for Jacob Turner, are keeping an eye on his load this year.
I think it's a little different with Henderson Alvarez, who pitches tomorrow night against the Braves, because of his injury early in the year. His innings numbers aren't real high, and the same for Nathan Eovaldi.
Anthony Rendon takes in.
Yeah, Henderson Alvarez tomorrow night against a tough little right-hander, Chris Medlin. 4-game series against Atlanta. And if you want to mark on your calendar or smartphone, Wednesday night, Jose Fernandez in his final start of the year against the terrific left-hander Mike Minor.
And that's it. There will be no command performance, no encore performance. That'll be it for Jose. And for Fernandez, he's done everything he could possibly do to win the National League Rookie of the Year. It would be certainly nice to see him finish with a flourish and leave everybody with a lasting memory, so to speak. Rendon waits on the breaking ball, tags at the left. Yelich dives, and it's going to cost him because it's going to get by him, and it's going to go to the wall, and a catcher is going to score from first base. And it's 5-3.
Well, it's a quick decision you have to make, but you also have to realize if you don't get it, you don't knock it down, it's a whole lot of trouble in this big ballpark. So with Yelich making the decision, he's got to make that choice. But all of a sudden, this ball just hooks away from him. He doesn't get leather on it, can't knock it down, and Rendon ends up at third, and Ramos comes in to score. That run, the final run, tagged to the line of Jacob Turner.
Infield in for Strasburg, who swings and misses. Nationals have 10 hits, 5 of them extra bases, 3 doubles, and 2 home runs.
Well, all of a sudden, after being shut down Friday night, the Nationals with just 2 base hits. Last night, 16 hits for Washington and 10 already today. Somebody made a good point. They said it's tough for a fastball pitcher like a Nathan Eovaldi to follow Jose Fernandez in the rotation. You know, same hard stuff. And Nathan just didn't have the good breaking ball last night. You'd love to have a Jamie Moyer type.
Well, and along those lines, for when Moyer was in a Seattle's rotation, Lou Piniella never liked to follow Moyer with a guy like a Jeff Fassero or another soft-tossing lefty.
Yeah.
He wanted to separate the soft-tossing lefties, keep them as far apart. Sorry, that was the first soft-tossing lefty I could pull out of my hat from.
Jeff Fassero is a good name. Pitched for the Expos, too, I think.
Two. Outside corner. You could hear Gary Cederstrom bring him up. Webb gets a strikeout. He's punched out 2. Sandwiched around the double by Rendon. And Denard Span comes up.
That just gets him with a good fastball. So nice job so far by Ryan Webb. Even though he gave up that triple, he's gotten a couple of strikeouts here. Just finding that outside corner.
Span takes away. Tommy's documented the run that Span is on at the top of the Washington order. Span coming over for the Minnesota Twins. 19 straight now. It's the longest active streak in baseball. He extended it with a base hit in the 4th.
It's been a solid streak, too. He's stayed over 400 during the hitting streak.
Catholic High School in Tampa. Ryan Webb in relief of Jacob Turner. That's Anthony Rendon, Ian Desmond, and Wilson Ramos with hits, not only to open the inning, but to knock out Turner. Counts 2-2. And so Mike Redmond is hoping for multiple innings out of Webb. And then after that, just about everybody's available except maybe Sam Dyson, who threw 3 innings last night. Got him. Down he goes. Span strikes out. Webb strikes out 3. Nationals go with a run and a 5-3 lead. Nationals lead. A couple of runs in the top of this inning. Bottom of the fifth. Joe and Cookie join us, our Spanish broadcasters for the day. Hi, guys.
Hi, Richie.
How are you guys doing? We're doing good. A couple runs to help out. We'd be doing a little bit better. How about you? You guys all right today?
Yes, sir. So far, so good. Tell me, I got a question for you guys.
Sure.
Have you ever seen a pitcher balk twice in one inning?
Well, this is the way I put it. No, and I've never seen a pitcher balk twice without anybody arguing about it, because he did balk.
That's right. Well, he accepted it right way. No question about it. That's unbelievable.
Well,
That's
the significant thing is both balks came with a runner at third base, and it cost Steven Strasburg a pair of runs.
Absolutely. What I said during that time, I said Strasburg has 2 RBIs.
And also coming into the game, he only had 1 balk all year. So
yeah, that's right.
That's right. I guess Cookie he was 2 for 2 with runners in scoring position.
That's right.
In his defense, he has settled down though. He got a little nerve racked in that inning, but he's settled down since then.
Yeah, you could tell that he was frustrated with himself.
Sure. Well, he couldn't get the curveball over. The fastball was all over the place, but finally he settled down a little bit. And finally back in the game. He's got a lead now by 2 runs, so a good chance for us maybe to come back and win this ball game.
Ed Lucas is up. Lucas takes his strike. All right, guys.
Good to talk to you guys.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
One more box.
And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Make sure you come to a set position. Lucas, first AB. Strasburg bends one outside.
See, it's a play, Rich, that you just don't hear aspiring broadcasters put on a tape, resume tape, that they send out a balk call.
Oh, I assure you, Tommy, somewhere there is an announcer that's practicing a balk call. I'd love to hear John Sterling's balk call.
And a lot of it would depend on who balked.
Could you imagine if Alfonso Soriano were to balk?
He'd be sorry about that.
Here is the 3-1, and it's a strike. Coors Light, cold hard fact.
As a fast, cold hard fact, too.
Almost as fast as that fastball that sawed off Ed Lucas. All right, backtrack. Here we go again. Coors Light, cold hard fact, Tommy. Average fastball velocity this season against the Marlins.
I have a question.
Nathan Eovaldi, I think, is faster than all 3 of those guys.
But where is Jose Fernandez on that list? I mean, the other night Jose was throwing 97, 98. He touched 99
on average fastball velocity for
in the major leagues or in the National League. Because in the National League, Nathan Eovaldi leads.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to figure Jose's right up there.
All right, well, that was against the Marlins, so we'll put the crack staff to use here on a Sunday if we can get them back in the truck. Pitch misses outside.
All of a sudden, Strasburg is retired 9 straight.
So we're looking for average fastball velocity, National League. Who are the league leaders, and what's Fernandez? Average fastball velocity. Does that put him in the top 5? Because I think last time we saw it was Eovaldi and Garrett Cole behind him, with Harvey in there as well.
Yeah, I have to think Jose's up in the top 5.
Coghlan sitting on a 3-0. Chris has bounced out, popped out. On the corner.
And it was.
Rendon fires over to first in time. 1-2-3 inning for Steven Strasburg.
Welcome back, everybody, to Marlins baseball. You may have seen this story in the Miami Herald a few weeks ago. This is Eloise Card, and that is her daughter. And this is an amazing story of how the Marlins have connected you two, because you've watched every game for the last 4 years. I'm talking first pitch to last pitch via telephone, because you live one in Fort Lauderdale and one in Miami.
That's right.
And why did the Marlins become the connector?
Well, we just started watching the baseball games together, and first it was just once in a while, and then we just stayed on the phone the whole game. Even the 20-inning game, we stayed on the whole time.
Good thing the changes of local telephone calls are different. You are now 92?
I'll be 92 in November. I'm 91 now.
Good for you. Big fans of Rich and Tommy, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, let me ask you, this moment for baseball being a connector is often, Donna, father and son type sport, but it's become mom and daughter as well.
Mom and daughter. Well, we both live too far away from each other to actually come every day, every game, and I've tried to convince her to come to games, and she didn't want to.
You've never been at a game together here. How about at the other park?
No.
Never. So how did you get her to convince her to come out? This is the first time they've seen the game in person. They're making a lot of noise.
My daughter's doing.
Oh, we got another interview. All right. How'd you do it?
I just knew that they were watching all these games together on the phone, and I thought it was such a cool story. So I emailed the link to the Miami Herald article to the Miami Marlins, and the organization, I can't say enough about them. They have just rolled out the red carpet for my mom and grandma to give them an amazing experience, and it's beyond our expectations.
All right,
really.
Eloise, what'd they do? They came by today? They pick you up today?
They came by and picked me up with a limo, brought me...
A limo?
A limo.
Whoa.
And her too. And then...
Separate limos.
And then they brought us here, and we met three of the players. We met Cishek and Jose.
Nice.
And Juan Pierre. And I got to hug Jose.
You hugged Jose? He's your favorite player?
He's my favorite player. And to me, he's the Tim Tebow of baseball.
Oh, I like that. Now, were there free drinks in the limo, too?
Well, no, I didn't. No drinks in the limo.
All right, well,
I'm a non-drinker anyway.
well,
So.
I didn't mean alcohol. No, I wasn't implying alcohol. I just meant water bottles.
No.
All right. Well, I'm glad you guys had a great time, and it's great to see that the Marlins could connect all of you, and you all did a great job. Will you come again?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. I'll pick you up next time. How about that?
Thank you.
All right. Let's go back to you guys. Nice to see you.
It's a great story. I had a chance to meet the trio on the way into the ballpark.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's it shows how baseball can just go through all kinds of generations.
Yeah, and the youngest of that trio lives in Colorado, and she was able to set this up long distance. Pretty cool stuff.
See, Rich, if we get an article in the Miami Herald, we can send the link. You'll have to show me how to do that. And maybe they'll pick us up in a limo.
No. I don't think that's happening. We could sign up for the Duffy's deal and come in the Duffy mobile.
That could happen. The party bus. We could get on the party bus. Because the Fox Sports Florida girls are on the party bus.
That's right. That's a good way to go to the ballpark, Tommy. Fouls it off. And it counts 1-2.
Good job. Couple of quick outs for Ryan Webb.
Mets have scored first in Cleveland. That's top 6. Not a game of consequence for the Mets, but we've told you about Cleveland's run. I wonder if the chicken is still loose during batting practice in the outfield.
Boy, I don't know.
The rally chicken that the Indians have employed. Not that they're paying the chicken, but I guess they've deployed him into the outfield.
By the way, Ryan Webb, I think, wanted that last pitch. He came back after the slow breaking ball, threw a pretty good two-seamer, but Fox Track shows he just missed. He's lowered his ERA. It's coming into this inning in the 2.8 range and has been very versatile.
He missed with a breaking ball. You can see his frustration after the miss. Here comes Desmond now, who is 2 for 3.
Sometimes that frustration goes back to a pitch that he thought he had for a strike, even though when he sees the replay, he'll see that it was off.
The Pirates all of a sudden are having trouble with starting pitching. Charlie Morton's been chased after an inning and 2/3 and 5 runs. Cardinals 5-0 over the Pirates bottom second. It's a big game for both teams. Huge jump from first, and Brantley's throw is not in time, and Adam LaRoche steals just his 4th base of the season.
You know, in talks about Ryan Webb as to how best to be used, if you think about him as a long man or even as a starter, with seeing his innings increase a little bit, that's one of the worries, is that he really has trouble and has had trouble holding base runners. And you saw the huge jump that LaRoche got, who's not a base stealer.
Breaking ball for a strike. It's 0-2. Desmond's 35th double drove in a run in the 3rd. He singled, stole the bag, and scored a run in the 5th.
There's some big hits in that Cardinal Pirate game. Matt Carpenter continues to be solid. Couple of hits. John Jay with a couple of hits already today. John Jay still reveling in the Canes' victory yesterday against the Gators. As is our own Ken Lee.
That's right. But it divides the house of the crack staff. We have not heard one peep from producer John Sulzer in the last 24 hours, and we're starting to grow concerned. Here's a 1-2. Another drive. Another extra base hit. Desmond around first. He's thinking 3. Ruggiano has it. Desmond turns second, on his way to 3rd, and he's in there with a triple.
Boy, how about Ian Desmond today? A single, a double, and a triple of his 3 hits, and scores LaRoche easily for the 6th run for Washington.
He's back to his Marlin killer ways after a slow start in the series. Just a breaking ball that Webb left up and in.
Yeah, you can see how that breaking pitch is supposed to be away, and when it kind of just hangs middle of the plate, right-handed hitters just jump all over that. Six extra base hits today for Washington. 2 doubles, 2 triples, 2 home runs. Been a rough matchup all year for the Marlins against Washington. Nationals win this game, they'll go 11-4 against Miami this year.
Ramos has gone homer single in this game. (6-3) Washington. 0-2 is in. Baltimore hot lately, but down right now 4-1 to the White Sox. That's in the 5th. Tigers lead Kansas City 2-0 bottom 4 in Kansas City. Echeverria on to first in time. Inning over, but the Nationals add on with a single run in the 6th. Just 2 hits and 3 runs. Coors Light freeze cam. We thought about freezing the 2 balks. Instead, the diving try by Christian Yelich. The ball would pop by him and get to the wall and drive in a run. And Anthony Rendon ended up at third with a triple.
Yeah, you can see why Yelich made that decision. For a moment, it looked like, as he started that dive, that he might make the catch. But the ball just kind of hooked away from him a little bit. And all of a sudden, Steven Strasburg has retired 10 straight since the Marlins scored those 3 runs, thanks in part to a couple of balks in that second inning.
Here's Donovan Solano, Christian Yelich, and Justin Ruggiano. Ow. Strasburg hits Solano. And he's on his way to first.
And that's after he struck him out twice. So I'm sure he wanted to try to establish a fastball in, because if you remember, he struck him out twice on a big breaking ball away.
Well, Solano could call his brother Jonathan and say, hey, next time you see Strasburg in the locker room, give him a what for. He's blood thicker than division rivals.
So 3 of the Marlin base runners today have been 2 walks and a hit batter.
The 2 hits, Ruggiano and Morrison singles. Strasburg misses away. Yelich going after a 2-0 pitch, fouls it off Mike Dunn in Miami's bullpen. Only 77 pitches for Strasburg here in the 6th.
Now you got Dunn loosening up, because remember, in the double switch, Ryan Webb came into Polanco's spot. So after Yelich, you have Ruggiano, Morrison, and then the pitcher.
Struck him out. Strasburg catches the outside corner. Let's go to Los Angeles now for a Fox Sports 1 game break. All right, a base hit into left field for Justin Ruggiano. In that ball game, the Cardinals have a 5-0 lead over the Pirates. We'll keep you updated on that. Here, it's 6-3 Nationals on top.
They get a couple of men on just like that. You have a guy who's been showing some power lately. Logan Morrison comes up representing the tying run.
It's only 3 hits against Strasburg, and Ruggiano has 2 of them. Morrison has the other. Solano at second. Against left-handed hitters, he's really been able to stick that breaking ball on the outside corner.
The one pitch he doesn't have going for him today has been his changeup. He's thrown it a few times, but he really hasn't come close in throwing it for a strike.
Or throwing it as often or as effective as he usually does. Greg Dobbs has emerged, as you pointed out. That 6th spot now occupied by Ryan Webb. 18,990 for the attendance. There it is again.
Yeah, he's finding that outside corner with that, too. Spent a little time. Spent one stint on the disabled list this year. It was because of a lat strain. But other than that, Strasburg has stayed pretty healthy all year. Through his first complete game, first ever shutout this year. There's that changeup.
So Morrison has seen every pitch he's got.
That's what was so impressive Friday night about Jose Fernandez. He had all of his pitches working.
Ah, there you go. Average fastball velocity. Now, you know what? If you could put that list back up, I don't think Nathan Eovaldi has enough innings to qualify. Because
that's probably why.
Eovaldi's fastball velocity, average fastball velocity, is above 96 miles an hour. So Fernandez behind Strasburg, behind Harvey, but I believe Eovaldi belongs at the top of that list. I don't think he has enough innings to have popped in there. Count full, 3-2. His best pitch to lefties all day has been the backdoor breaking ball. Let's see if he throws it to Morrison here.
Problem is, for a hitter, if you sit on that backdoor breaking ball and he throws that 96-mile-an-hour heater, you're in trouble.
Morrison lines it to left. Moore is there, and he makes the catch.
Well, I tell you what, I give Strasburg, I give his catcher, Wilson Ramos, a lot of credit. Because the pitch that's probably for today been his third pitch, one that he struggled with, he went with on a 3-2 count through the changeup. And really, if you're Logan Morrison, to hit that ball that well, that's a good job of hitting. Because you are not expecting that pitch at all from Strasburg.
Greg Dobbs now. Dobbs hitting here in the bottom of the sixth with 2 outs. Steven Strasburg in command, and the score really not indicative of how well he's pitched. 2 of Miami's 3 runs have scored on balks, believe it or not. The crack staff was able to come up with the fastball velocity number. Dobbs turns, drives it down the line, and it falls for a base hit. Solano scores. Up with the go is Worth. Holding at third is Ruggiano, and Greg Dobbs yet another pinch hit.
Well, Greg Dobbs just continues. Number 10 on the year in the pinch hit department. Saw the numbers. He had some pretty good success against Steven Strasburg. And gets himself a line drive, RBI base hit here. Fastball in, he turns on it, got jammed just a little bit.
95th career pinch hit for Dobbs. He is the active leader. 75th pinch hit RBI. He is the active leader.
So the Marlins, all of a sudden, a couple of guys off the bench. Juan Pierre's on a nice little pinch hitting roll. JP with 8 pinch hits.
Steve McCaddy's out to chat it up with Strasburg. I was going to say we should challenge the crack staff to find out what the major league record for balking in runs in a game. It's one thing to just commit a balk. It's another thing to balk in a run. And Strasburg has balked in 2.
That's putting a challenge to the crack staff on a Sunday afternoon.
Craig, have you got any? Can you shed any light on that?
A little bit. I don't know that the baseball record, but I do know it's the first time it's ever happened in a Marlins game in 1 inning where they either have been balked in 2 runs or have balked themselves 2 runs as the runner will move up there. And it's the first time it's happened in Major League Baseball. 2 balks in an inning, both scoring runs. Since 1992, Angels in the 8th inning scored 2 on Yankee balks. And it's only happened 10 times since 1974. That doesn't answer your initial question.
Oh, no, but we're satisfied. That was good.
That's like voluminous stuff that we above and beyond. Way to go, Craig.
All right, thanks.
Echeverria now, and Strasburg misses out. Dobbs alertly getting to second on that ball in the dirt, and he joins Ruggiano in scoring position. And Echeverria is going to get a 2-0 pitch to swing at here.
That was a good job on Dobbs' part to alertly see that pitch in the dirt and took off.
And Etch had a pretty good rip, fouls it back. It's 2-1. It's a problem against a guy like Strasburg or Fernandez or Harvey, all the guys you saw on that list. You can be in a 3-0 count, a 2-1 count, a 3-1 count, sit fastball, get fastball, swing at the fastball, and not get it, not be able to catch up to it. Two and two. Two. Got him. Strasburg strikes him out. A Greg Dobbs pinch hit single brings Miami within 2. Auction. And they are those really cool Miami Marlin retro jerseys that the Marlins wore in Milwaukee. 2 of them. And they just happen to belong to Giancarlo Stanton and Jose Fernandez. And they just happen to be autographed, authenticated, autographed. And you can have them. Marlins.com/auction is the place to go. If you go to Marlins.com/auction, you see the score at 6-4. You can bid right now on those 2 jerseys. If you are the winning bidder, obviously all the money goes to the Marlins Foundation, a terrific charity that supports South Florida youth. If you are the winning bidder of the Stanton jersey or the winning bid of the Jose Fernandez jersey, you will also get a meet and greet with said player, the guy that wore that retro jersey, Mr. Stanton and Fernandez.
It's a pretty good deal.
Marlins.com/auction.
Because no one else is going to have that.
Well, and that's the thing. Those jerseys aren't out there. They're not around. The Marlins had to get special permission from the Milwaukee Brewers to be able to auction those 2 things off because those jerseys were actually property of the Brewers who had that throwback game in Milwaukee. And they're the cool jerseys that were worn by the Miami Marlins of the International League. They've got the Satchel Paige patch on the sleeve. Satchel Paige pitching for those Miami Marlins. Mike Dunn takes over for Ryan Webb. Webb ends up going 2 innings. Jacob Turner 4+ innings. Turner could not get an out in the 5th. And so here is Dunn. Well, we have a little bit of Bach history rolling in to complement the 2 balks by Strasburg, both of which balked in a run. There's Drew Storen in the bullpen. The record for most balks in a game by a pitcher in the National League and the American League. Bob Shaw of Milwaukee in '63 had 5 balks in a ball game. In the American League, there are 5 different pitchers that committed 4 balks in a game, and some familiar names. A couple guys I've not really heard of: Gene Walker of Seattle, John Dobson, not Dobson, but Dobson of Boston back in 1989, Vic Raschi of New York, and then Rick Honeycutt when he was with Oakland, and Bobby Witt when he was with Texas, as Moore strikes up.
You know, there's a story, and I'm going to have to do my own homework behind the 5 balks of the late Bob Shaw. Great character, tremendous major league pitcher up in the Jupiter area for a long time, and I believe the story is that there was a move that he was committing that he didn't feel was a balk, but they kept calling it on him, and thus he was called for 5.
And the American League guys all had 4. Now, the most balks in an inning, and Strasburg's balks both came in the same inning in the 2nd. The National League and the American League record is 3 in an inning. In 1988, Don Heinkel of Detroit. In 1930, Milt Schaffner of Cleveland. They share the American League record with 3 in an inning. National League, Jim Cott of Pittsburgh in '88. Jim Owens of Cincinnati in '63.
Kitty wasn't coming to a stop, probably.
And Bob Shaw back in '63. We could have called Jay Randolph for confirmation on some of those games. Anthony Rendon. Little tapper. Lucas charging. And makes a nice play. Dunn has the first 2 outs of the 7th.
And it looks like that's going to be all for Steven Strasburg. Davey Johnson going to his bench. Scott Hairston is going to pinch hit against Mike Dunn, who's gotten a couple of quick outs.
Four innings, 9 hits, 5 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts for Turner.
And for Strasburg, he ends with 6 innings, 4 hits, 4 runs, a couple of walks, 7 strikeouts. ERA now at 2.96.
High pop was fouled. The only, and we knew that was going to be a foul ball, but there was for a moment there, Tommy, a little bit of suspense because that ball almost hit one of the steel girders.
And we've not had that happen in 2 years.
No, it's going to happen one of these days, but that one just missed. The ground rule is if the ball hits something on the roof in foul territory, it's a dead ball. If it hits something on the roof in fair territory, it's a live ball.
Yeah, I think the likelihood of something being hit, it would be in foul territory.
Hairston with the count 2-2. And he swings and misses. Dunn looks really sharp. A 1-2-3 7th.
Well, how about some long ball? Wilson Ramos with a shot here at Marlins Park. He's been a hot hitter. The Marlins get a couple of runs on Steven Strasburg. Runners at third, bases were loaded at the time he balked. Little dribbler up the line. Echeverria gets another run in, and then another balk is called on Strasburg. So the Marlins get 3 runs in that second inning, but they couldn't avoid the long ball. They haven't avoided the long ball from Ryan Zimmerman in a long time. That's his 22nd career home run against the Marlins. Ian Desmond has been on fire. He's had a big series. And there's that guy, Wilson Ramos, again with the runner going second to third. He picks up the base hit. And not through were the Nationals. That ball just getting out of the reach of Christian Yelich. And they're able to get more of that guy Desmond again into deep center field. Desmond has a single, a double, and a triple in this game. Greg Dobbs pinch hitting, picks up his 10th pinch hit of the season, driving home a run. And that's how we stand as we enter the bottom of the 7th inning. It's just a 2-run game.
Goodyear Blimp still high above. Actually, not that high above. Looks like a low cruise over Marlins Park. We appreciate the Goodyear Blimp all around Miami this afternoon. So no more Steven Strasburg. 6 innings for Strasburg. 4 hits and 4 runs. Corey Brown enters the ball game, as does Drew Storen. And so you saw Brown out and left.
And no double switch in this case. Hairston pinch hitting for the pitcher made the last out. Just a defensive move for Davey Johnson. Who's going to manage this ball club next year, Rich?
Well,
the Nationals I'm talking about.
So,
I don't want to confuse people here.
I know that's where you're going. Here, Rob Brantley is at the plate. Matt Williams was a popular name about a month ago. Williams has ties to Mike Rizzo.
Has an Arizona connection with Mike Rizzo.
Fine general manager of the Nationals, who was a terrific scouting director for Arizona. And many feel that a guy like Williams is cut of the same cloth from Kirk Gibson, a no-nonsense type guy. That's one of the reasons the Cubs went with Dale Swain.
I actually think that would be a good pick, because I think that's the type of manager they need to have in there. Davey Johnson has said he was going to retire after this year. Good breaking ball by Storn to put away Rob Brantley, who's 0 for 2 today.
Yeah, that's a term that's always intrigued me because, and I'm as guilty as anybody for repeating it, the no nonsense.
See, the problem, this is how the thing goes. You go 2 or 3 years with a no nonsense Buck Showalter type, and then all of a sudden he gets on everybody's nerves, and then you bring in the laid back Charlie Manuel type.
Well, that's what I mean about that term, that no nonsense. That's implying that the other guy is nonsense, right? Or has some nonsense.
You bring in a guy on edge, a fiery Larry Boa.
Yes.
And now you got to make a change, so you're not going to bring in the same type of personality.
And that's almost a given anytime you change managers in a situation where your team's not going well and you want to turn things around. Now, the Nationals didn't think they were going to be in that spot. The Nationals felt like at the end of this year, Davey Johnson could just pass the torch from a postseason team to another guy.
Whoever it is going to be stepping into a pretty good situation, because they're a good ball club.
You know, there'll be no shortage of guys throwing their caps in, whether they're nonsense guys or no nonsense guys. 1-2 coming. Foul back to the screen. Had an interesting conversation with Don Mattingly yesterday about managing styles and what he learned from Joe Torre, because
Mattingly laid back and no nonsense.
Yes, and that's where I was
going. A little bit of
both. Mattingly essentially is managing the same type of team: salaries, egos, reputations, accolades that Torre managed. Of course, not with the same success, at least not yet. Torre, of course, with the 4 World Series, but Mattingly was on that staff. He said the one thing that he learned from Torre was whenever there was a problem or there looked like there was going to be a problem, Torre would address it immediately and would not let anything fester, would not let anything grow. He would get that player in his office right away and iron things out. Here's the 2-2. And it's something that Mattingly has done as the Dodger manager. We've seen it with Yasiel Puig.
Yes, certainly he has the talented players. He has the high payroll.
Yeah, he has guys that feel like, I mean, certainly are getting paid a lot of money. And
in a large market.
Should be in the lineup and all that. And Puig is the more public. There, I'm sure with the Yankees and with the Dodgers are a lot of instances of guys that were unhappy or situations that were evolving that never came to fruition because either Torre or Mattingly got out in front and squashed it before it did.
So there's something to be said, and I think you see this often. There are many exceptions that you don't. It's a good backhand flip by LaRoche, a Gold Glover. But I think there's something to be said about a guy, as in Mattingly's case, who was a coach under Joe Torre, and in the case of Matt Williams, a coach under Kirk Gibson. He's seen his style.
Here's Chris Coghlan now. Coghlan an 0 for 3. And Storn with a fastball up. One of the things that the Nationals would like to do is to get Drew Storn back to where he had been the last couple of years. And not necessarily closing games. They've got Soriano to do that. But getting back to being a dominant right-handed bullpen guy, whether he's closing or setting up or even pitching the 7th.
Because if he is that guy, all of a sudden they have the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings taken care of.
Coghlan pulls it foul.
Right now, Tyler Clippard has a hold on that 8th inning. But you're right about a guy like Storen, who's had a season of over 40 saves.
Got an ERA of over 5, which doesn't really fit his career numbers. 1-2. Coghlan inside outs that ball. Bobble by Desmond. And it skips past LaRoche. Coghlan gets to first on what probably will be an error on Ian Desmond.
It probably will be an error. It's not an easy play, mainly because of the way the ball was spinning. Coghlan got jammed. Ball had a lot of spin as it went out toward Ian Desmond. Kind of kicked back the other way. He still has a chance, but then throws low, so he could be charged with the error on the throw. A lot of times, most of the time, LaRoche picks that ball. He wasn't able to come up with that one. And if it is an error, which it is, it's the 17th on Desmond, 98 this year on the Nationals.
Solano goes after a fastball and fouls it back and out of play. Last year, the Nationals spent 172 days in first place.
What a difference.
Solano into center field, base hit. And with 2 outs, that's going to bring Yelich up to face Storen. Miami down by a couple. Now, Giancarlo Stanton didn't start this ball game. He has a bit of a sore ankle. He is available to pinch hit.
I wonder how many days the Braves have spent in first place this year.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Tough day for Yelich, 0 for 3, a couple strikeouts. He had a rough time with Steven Strasburg. 7 strikeouts for Strasburg. Coghlan and Solano out there.
Yelich trying to keep a streak alive and over the last 10 games coming into this one. 17 hits, 17 for 40. You know how we always appreciate our crack staff from all over checking in. Nice to know that Clark Spencer of the Miami Herald considers himself part of the crack staff. But reminding us there was a ball that hit one of the girders on a foul ball behind home plate last year. So there has been one.
That may have been in a non-television game.
Possibly so.
As rare as those are, or we just flat out missed it, which is more likely. Here's the 1-2. And it's inside. Jose Fernandez and Rob Brantley putting the gear on because that foul ball hit the facing of the dugout and then ricocheted off the inside of that rail and then back into the dugout. Watch this. Mm. 2-2. Got him. Storen strikes out Yelich. Miami leaves a couple. On to the 8th. The Nationals a 2-run lead. Cole Hamels. And Atlanta has tied Philly 2-2 in the top of the 8th. That Pittsburgh-St. Louis battle is for first place in the Central. Later on, Arizona, San Francisco, Milwaukee, Chicago, Colorado, San Diego, and a chance for the Reds to sweep the Dodgers tonight. And that is a Homer Bailey, Clayton Kershaw matchup. Here's the poll question. Who's going to win the Central? The Pirates are the sentimental favorites. No one voted for the Cardinals. I did not text in, but I threw my hat in for the Cardinals. Tommy Hutton, you went with the Reds.
I did.
And neither of us would complain if the Pirates won.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. Well, nice inning in the 7th, the 1-2-3 inning for Mike Dunn, so he gets the 8th inning. At least he gets the first batter in the 8th inning. We'll see what Mike Redmond does with Zimmerman and Worth to follow after Span. Homer Bailey, seems like every time he goes out there, he has no-hit stuff.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. He's been one of those tough luck guys in terms of one-loss record.
How about the well-traveled former Marlin for a brief time, Yusmeiro Petit, the other night for the San Francisco Giants.
One pitch from a perfect game. Wow. This is a guy with a career ERA of over 5 who's been designated for assignment multiple times.
He was 5-6 with an ERA just under 5 in AAA before getting the call up by the Giants. But gave up a base hit with 2 out in the 9th to Eric Chavez.
On a ball that Hunter Pence almost caught. A liner that Pence made a diving try on. And Pence made almost the same play. You see Tyler Clippard. Pence made almost the same play, not at the end of the game, but late in the game in Tim Lincecum's no-hitter in San Diego this year. That one he got to. This one he just trapped.
Now that Hunter Pence is everywhere.
Yes. One-two. Foul backing out of play.
Yeah, the Marlins, I had kind of forgotten, but they had gotten Petit from the Mets in the trade along with Mike Jacobs that sent Carlos Delgado to New York. But then Petit has been released numerous times. He's been designated by the Giants a couple of times.
Arizona?
Yeah.
A couple times. Span waits.
I think this weekend, if not today, I'm not sure the exact date, is the anniversary of the almost perfect game from Armando Galarraga. Had the missed call at first base, it would have ended the game.
I just saw Jim Joyce yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, Galarraga, in an odd way, ironically, has probably garnered more attention for that, for not getting the perfect game. I mean, do you remember Galarraga or do you remember Dallas Braden?
I remember Matt Cain.
Okay. I mean, Galarraga's not a household name in terms of what he's accomplished on the field, aside from that night.
And Braden, who threw a perfect game with Oakland.
He's kind of the same type of guy.
Yeah.
Something
but
happened.
I think I remember Braden's. Wasn't his on Mother's Day?
Yes, it was.
And his grandmother, who raised him, was at the ballpark.
Echeverria back there to get it for the first out of the 8th inning. Latest and greatest in television technology is coming to South Florida during the Braves series. We have a new toy, folks. Fox Sports Florida and Phantom Cam.
Watch out when you give the crack staff a new toy.
Yeah, Giancarlo Stanton swings. all kinds of cool stuff we can watch. And that comes up for the 4-game series with the Marlins and the Braves. Phantom cam. It's super duper, incredibly slow motion. And that's tomorrow night. As of today, A.J. Ramos is now in this game thanks to a Metro PCS call to the bullpen. Goodyear, more driven.
Well, we kind of figured after the left-hander was out of the way and he gave Mike Dunn a battle, but he retired Span. Then Mike Redmond went to the bullpen. Got the right-hander, A.J. Ramos, now a couple of tough righties due up.
That would be Mr. Zimmerman and Worth.
So this is one of those that you call, it's not a soft landing to face these two guys.
No, it's not. Zimmerman has homered 3 times in the series, twice last night, once in today's game. Worth has 5 hits in the series. Lucas to his left. Ramos has an out. Two outs, and here comes Worth. Well, the Yankees-Red Sox game is a low-scoring, tight affair with the Yankees up 3-2. Trying to slow down Boston. That's in the 8th. Mets and Indians 1-1 in Cleveland. It's a big game for Cleveland. So they've got a couple of games going on in Cleveland, right? They've got a baseball game, and the Dolphins are playing at Cleveland. Mm-hmm. That's just down the street and down the hill. Down by the lake is where the football stadium is. The baseball park, Progressive, is up a little further up downtown, but not that far apart.
Great 3-game series so far. Mike Napoli, the Red Sox, out of Flanagan High School, Pembroke Pines. 7 for 12, 3 home runs. First 3 games of that series against the Yankees.
Worth fouls it back to the screen. Well, we were talking about teams that have snuck up in the Central, and we're talking about the Indians. And I mentioned that the Kansas City Royals are sneaking up as well, and they've snuck up on the Tigers. 4-2 Royals now in the 7th. And so Kansas City at 74 and 68. They're 2.5 behind Cleveland, who said a game back in the wild card. It's in. Ramos loses Worth.
Now, you can't tell me that Tiger fans don't have a little concern about Justin Verlander. He was beaten by the Royals last night. He gave up 4 runs in 7 innings, and his record now 12-11 with a 3.64 ERA. Not quite Verlander-like, pretty good numbers, but certainly not the way he's pitched in the past. Today they're giving it to Pfister. He's given up all 4 runs.
Speaking of South Florida, if you're going to go Napoli, I'll go Eric Hosmer on you.
Okay.
16th homer, 3-run shot. Part of that comeback by Kansas City. And just for good measure, 2 runs scored on a 1-for-2 day by Emilio Bonifacio. Ball's hit pretty well. And Ruggiano makes the catch. Inning over. Bottom of the 8th. Marlins down a couple.
Marlins trying to get back in this one, down by only 2 as we go to the bottom of the 8th inning. Tomorrow the Atlanta Braves will be in town, first of a 4-game series. Wednesday night, the Marlins have announced they're going to let Jose Fernandez go as long as possible to try and get his 12th win. It will be his final start of this amazing 2013 rookie season. We'll have it all for you, starting with Marlins Live with Jeff Conan. Rich and Tommy will join us as well. 6:30, ball game at 7 o'clock. Jose Fernandez, one final bid to put some more impressive numbers out as he goes for Rookie of the Year 2013. More on that coming up during the week and the Wednesday night. We hope to see you out here at the ballpark. After the game, Mike Redmond's press conference, Jeff Conines analysis, Rich and Tommy final thoughts. We'll set you up for the Braves and look at this one as well coming up on Marlins Live postgame. Guys?
All right, thank you, Craig. And the Marlins and Nationals cannot play by rule without Tyler Clippard appearing, so here he is. And his numbers are very good this year. His numbers against the Marlins in his career are just incredible. This is a guy that has dominated the Fish, and he's done it from the middle relief role, which is really unique in that when Clippard comes in the ballgame, the Marlin bats usually get really, really quiet.
Yeah, he's done it against a lot of teams. You saw the appearances. So he's used a lot by Davey Johnson.
Justin Ruggiano leads it off.
By the way, Jose Fernandez will come into that game Wednesday night with an 8-0 record at home and an ERA at home of 1.19.
And maybe he'll get a couple more hits. like he did on Friday. Boy, Ruggiano is swinging it well today. Slaps one into left field. 3 for 4 is Ruggiano. Miami's had opportunities, Tommy, to climb even here with the Nationals. They had a couple runners aboard in the 7th. They got a run, but left 2 in the 6th.
But Ruggiano with half the Marlins hits today.
Morrison 1 for 3. Hits it hard and foul. Just foul.
Just in case you're wondering, and I was wondering, so I looked. Tyler Clippard has allowed 8 home runs this year.
Clippard has that great changeup. Got in, and Morrison pops it up. Zimmerman makes the catch. I think maybe Morrison was leaning out thinking changeup. Juan Pierre's going to come up and pinch hit. Pierre with 1 out here in the 8th, and Ruggiano at first.
Well, Pierre with a pinch hit in the ball game last night for his 2,212th base hit.
That's a soft one hopper, and Pierre is out by a step on a nice play by Rendon. Ruggiano up to second, and Echeverria comes up. And Pierre, as he, with every hit, Tommy, seems to pass a legend and tie a legend.
Yeah, he's on a great list. He broke a tie with Willie McCovey, and next on the list with 2,215, so just 3 away, is Joe DiMaggio. So JP and Carlos Beltran, active players near there. So he's closing in on the Yankee Clipper.
Tough series for Echeverria. He's 0 for 3 with a couple strikeouts here. 1 for 11 in the series.
Echeverria has played the most games this year of any Marlin. This is 127th game. The question, a little trivia, would be who is next on the list? Who's played the second most amount of games this year as a Marlin?
That's a great question. Here's the 1-1. Justin Ruggiano.
You are correct.
That's a tough one. You think about guys that have been injured. And
third would really get you. Third on the list is Greg Dobbs. You know, all the games he started early in the year.
Right, and all the pinch hits.
Then you throw in all the pinch hit appearances, yeah.
Well, it just shows you, remember the Marlins were without Stanton and Morrison entire April and May. And, of course, Stanton was injured most of those 2 months. Tyler Clippard finishes the fish in the 8th. Goodyear Blimp is still chugging along. Tommy, a new member of the Marlins organization.
Well, congratulations to Marty Sewell, Marty's wife Meredith. Marty, manager, media relations. Welcome, little girl, Malone Deanne Sewell. 8 pounds, 11 ounces. All is well. So congrats, Marty.
Actually, congrats to Mrs. Marty. I mean, that's,
well, yeah.
That's the heavy lifting. Steve Cishek with Ian Desmond, Wilson Ramos, and the pitcher spot up for the Nationals. Or excuse me, that would be Brown in that spot. He came in a straight-up swap, Corey Brown. There's Rafael Soriano, Nationals closer, easing into his warm-up routine.
It's funny how it would be a great study as to the different routines that closers have. You know, a good one that comes to mind, Trevor Hoffman. Used to hang in the clubhouse a little bit.
Take a shower.
He'd take a shower. Then he'd get out to the bullpen about the 7th inning. I mean, he had a routine. Every closer has a little bit of a routine.
I wonder if there were ever games where, say, the Padres scored 8, 9, 10 runs early, or fell down by 10 or 12 runs,
and it didn't look like it would be a save
and he
situation.
Didn't take the shower. Like 5th or 6th inning, it's like, why bother?
I want you to know, though, my routine is that I always take a shower before a broadcast. So don't worry about it, Rich.
Desmond, a comebacker. Cishek flips to first. But you're right. There are guys that are all of a sudden, let's get the adrenaline going. I think Brian Wilson's routine was like that when he was a closer, and probably continued somewhat now.
Some of them really need that heavy adrenaline. Cishek not one of those. He's kind of relaxed. Soriano looks like he is.
Yes. Ramos, busy day. 3 hits, 2 RBIs, home run.
This is certainly not a save situation. Cishek trying to get some work, but boy, has he been locked in for a few months.
That's kind of been hidden in the Marlins' struggles this year. Miami enters the ballgame at 53 and 87. The fact that Cishek, once he hit June, has been a dominant closer, one of the dominant closers in the game. He just hasn't had as many opportunities as a Kimbrel. He's tied right now with Kevin Gregg for the 3rd most saves in baseball going back to June 8th. And he has the 2nd longest active streak at 24, behind Kimbrel, who's at 34.
Of course, the Marlins will see the Braves and Craig Kimbrel for 4 games starting tomorrow night.
Cishek hasn't given up a run in 12 innings. If you want to see a ball that's a no-doubter, here's your AT&T UVerse Rewind. This is the Ramos home run.
Fastball about middle in. And off that back wall, that left center field wall. Not that time.
Cishek strikes him out. I think the initial distance on the Ramos home run was 405 feet.
Yeah, I think they've increased that a little bit.
I'm calling 402 feet. I'm saying that thing went a little further than that because it hits that far up. I think the true distance on that is going to be extended
Well,
into the
because
420s.
where it went over is 386. That's a long way out there, and of course that wall's back of the fence. Zimmerman's was estimated at 415, and if his was 415, Ramos was further than that.
Corey Brown up there right now, his first at bat. Brown came in as a defensive replacement left field. Sends a pop up towards the line. Yelich. Corey Brown out of Tampa, Plant High School, and played his college ball at Oklahoma State.
And Corey Brown started the other night in place of Denard Span.
Came to the Nationals in the Josh Willingham trade back in the offseason, December of 2010. Cishek gets him. Still sharp is Cishek. A 1-2-3 night. Miami down a couple. Here comes Soriano. Hanger. Bottom of the ninth. Nationals up by a couple. Toyota Trend. In this ballpark, year 2 of Marlins Park. The Nationals have never won back-to-back games in the same series. Hey, Tommy, the little lightning dancing.
Yeah, be careful out there.
That's not part of the Toyota Trend. Some nasty weather coming from the west. All right, I've been corrected. Northwest.
That means it'll hit my area just as I get home.
There you go. Here's who hits the bottom of the ninth, and that's Rafael Soriano, Rob Brantley, Ed Lucas, Chris Coghlan against the Nationals closer, who tries to shut the door on what would be a win for Steven Strasburg in a 6-4 ball game. And all 4 runs against Strasburg. Jacob Turner started. He gave up 5 runs, 2 innings for Ryan Webb. Webb gave up a run. Tommy Air Berlin. Flight 95 coming in. or leaving, it looks like. One and two to Brantley.
Brantley looking for his first hit today. Struggled offensively when he was in AAA. You'd say maybe some of that because he was putting in a lot of effort, a lot of work on his catching.
Desmond out, Brown in, and Brown is there to make the catch. Soriano does have kind of that laissez-faire demeanor and body language out there. He's very relaxed.
Well, it's worked for Mariano Rivera.
I'm not sure what song Soriano comes into, but the relievers that are like him, they still seem to pick a heavy metal type anthem.
Wow, another blown save though for Mariano Rivera on the year, and his second in that series against Boston. Boston has tied it. It's 3-3.
Yikes. That Yankee bullpen meltdown Friday night was ugly. Rivera had, what was it, Thursday night? He had a blown save.
And Rivera worked 2 innings today. So Joe Girardi trying to get 2 innings. Gave up 2 hits in the run that tied it.
And Lucas strikes out. And this is easy for Soriano. He's got the first 2 outs. Chris Coghlan is all that stands between Soriano and the Nationals' 73rd win of the season.
And as you mentioned early in the game, they're hanging on by their fingernails to a little hope of a wild card berth.
They need one of the 3 teams in the Central to just collapse. Speaking of that, the Cardinals have an 8-0 lead over the Pirates in the bottom of the 5th. St. Louis getting a well-pitched ball game. The Pirates have just 1 hit and haven't scored through 5 innings. Coghlan takes down low. A Michael Wacha start.
No sooner do you speak, it's 9-0 now. St. Louis.
Baltimore still having problems with the White Sox. 4-1 Chicago. Bottom 8. Cleveland and the Mets 1-1 bottom 8. 2-1 to Coghlan. As Tommy pointed out, the Yankees and the Red Sox 3-3 bottom 9 in New York. Kansas City is hanging on to a 5-2 lead over Detroit. That'd be a big win for the Royals. Pop fouling out of play. Now the Rays have kind of stumbled, and that's allowed the Clevelands and the Baltimores and the Kansas Cities to all pick up some ground in the wild card. The Rays and Mariners play in Seattle. That game is just underway in Seattle.
That's a Matt Moore start for the Rays.
2-2 coming to Coghlan. That pop-up is out of play. Were that pop-up in Oakland, the game would be over. And in Oakland, Houston has a 1-0 lead.
And you'd still be 20 or 30 feet from the dugout.
That game just underway in Oakland. Has Oakland even lost to Houston this year?
I think maybe a couple of times. That's about it.
Coghlan, a chopper out to Rendon, who flips to first in time. And Rafael Soriano untucks the shirt. That's his signature move. And he shuts the door. The Nationals take the series. Winners last night. and a 6-4 win today.